A few years ago, I was spending my morning time with the Lord, and I felt like this question just dropped into my heart. 20 years from now, what is the greatest potential to bring great joy or devastating despair into your life? And I was surprised. I thought, wow, I hadn't considered it. And though the question was unexpected, it's interesting because almost immediately in my heart, I knew exactly what the answer was. My children. And then the next question that I heard after I kind of answered that in my heart, my children, the next question I heard along with it is, how are you intentionally learning and growing so that you as a dad have the best opportunity to help your kids become who they're called to be? And if I'm going to be honest, I was challenged big time. Because I knew that if you looked at how I was spending my time, what I was learning about, what I was reading, there was almost no focus on developing into becoming a better dad. I was reading books about leadership or business or church or finances, but at that time, nothing about parenting. And since that time, there has been a significant shift in me. Because now as I read God's word, I often read it through the lens of how is this going to apply to me as a parent, or how does it apply to my kids specifically? Almost every other book that I read now has something to do with parenting, because I realized, as the Lord was challenging me, I realized that parenting is a skill, just like anything else, and that it doesn't come naturally. It takes work and effort to learn and to develop and to get better at it. And so I would ask all of us this morning the same question. What is the greatest potential for all the world to bring great joy or devastating despair? It would be the next generation. And so for the next 2 weeks, our focus as a church, as we do our daily Devos, is on discipling the next generation. This week, we'll focus on speaking to parents specifically, and each morning we'll talk about a different age demographic, a different age group of how we parent those young people. And next week, I'm excited because we'll talk all about how we all have a calling to impact the next generation, whether we're parents or not. And that even if you are a parent of certain kids, like we all have a part to play in impacting more than that for the next generation. So we'll practically talk through that. How do we get involved? How do we take steps to impact each age group to help point these young people to Christ? Hey, if you don't have kids, or if your kids are older, please don't check out. There are so many young families who could use your encouragement and your advice if you can learn some of these principles. So this morning, I'm very excited. I'll be talking about parenting toddlers and preschool age children. My wife Angela and I, we have 4 kids that are 8 and under, and so we certainly have a few years experience parenting this age group for sure. We've had some amazing moments along the way, and we have absolutely blown it and had some really challenging failures over the years too, both of us. The truth is, parenting is hard. And so I want you to know I certainly am not coming from a perspective of, hey, we have it all figured out. In fact, some of our biggest failures are the things that I hope to speak to today of how we can learn and we can all grow and become better parents. So we'll start by studying Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 10. These are some incredible verses when it talks about loving God and how to raise our kids. So let's jump in. It says, "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, so that you may enjoy long life. Hear, Israel, and be careful to obey, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commands that I give you today are to be on your hearts." And then listen carefully to verse 7. "Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands, bind them on your foreheads, write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." And so one of the most significant principles that these verses are talking about is that Jesus should be part of every single aspect of our lives. So our everyday conversations, Jesus should be involved. It's important that he's not just a part of our Sunday morning routine. No, that he's a part of our everyday journey, especially when it comes to the littlest kids in our homes, the toddlers and the preschoolers. Angela and I have found that the most consistent rhythms that you install, like those rhythms are what your kids lean into. They need that structure of consistency. Well, if you can install these rhythms, if you can put these rhythms in your life that point to Jesus, all of a sudden these little ones in your home, as they expect that certain parts of their day and certain parts of their week are going to point to Jesus. So for us, one of our favorite consistent rhythms has just been a series of catechism questions that our friends Corey and Tanner Cangelosi from the Hot Springs campus gave us. And so each night before bed, we do these catechism questions, and they're just all about the foundations of our faith. We usually start our kids somewhere between 2 and 3 years old. As they're learning to talk, they're already learning about God's word, about how it applies to their life. So our 2-year-old can already do the first 2 questions out of the 150 total that our 8-year-old knows at this point. So they start with simple questions like, who made you? And the answer is, God made me. And it goes on to say, hey, what else did God make? The answer, God made all things. Then we'll go on to say, why did God make you in all things? And the answer is, God made me and all things for his own glory. And so the rhythm of talking about these questions every night is now something that our kids just expect. They know we're going to do it. They understand that walking with Jesus and knowing about him, that those things are very important to our family. And what's cool is they also give an incredible framework for all the other questions that these little ones bring to mom and to dad frequently. And so this is just one little rhythm, but there are so many different things that you can do with your kids consistently that then point them back to Jesus. And so the other thing I want to talk about a little bit this morning is that it's so important that early on in this 2 to 3 year old range that you start to create a healthy rhythm of discipline. And discipline is simply a powerful combination of conversation and consequences. And I certainly won't tell you what your consequences should be. That's up to each family. But I will tell you that I believe that there's a way to create life in the midst of discipline moments. Some of the sweetest moments that I've had with my kids are actually in the midst of those discipline conversations. And I'm telling you, God's word is so clear on this. Proverbs 19:18 says, discipline your children while there is hope. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives. And it goes on to say in a different version, so that's NLT, and NIV, it says, discipline your children, for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to their death. So clearly, discipline's a big deal. And I would encourage just a couple of things in this area. First, discipline cannot happen well in the heat of an emotional moment. And so when disobedience or dishonor happens in your home, I encourage is first, create space. Allow yourself a moment to calm down. Allow your child a moment to calm down. This was such a hard lesson for me early in my parenting journey because when I'm battling anger, I cannot discipline well. I cannot love them well, and I cannot communicate clearly because I'm so fired up. And so I have to give them space. I have to give myself space. Once that has been time to cool down, then you can come in and you can have the next step, which is a conversation to make sure they understand the why. So why are they getting consequences? Was it disobedience? Was it dishonor? Was it a boundary that was broken? So making sure they have clear understanding of why there's consequences. Once that's established, then you can enforce the appropriate consequences of whatever is healthy for your home, something that they feel but that isn't excessive. And then the final step is then praying together, taking the time after you've had after you've had the conversation, after you've had the consequences, then pray together and make sure that there's a hug that happens at the end, that they know that their relationship with you is restored and that their behavior doesn't change their status with you as a loving parent. Because the thing is, at this stage, kids crave to know that they are your beloved child. That's the biggest thing they need to know, especially from the father. It's super important for the father and the mother. But I'm telling you, dads, our kids need to know, and we need to be very active participants in making sure that they know we love them and that they are our beloved child, but also that we are going to be involved in discipline because our kids need us to set those boundaries. So I can't wait for you all to learn from so many other people over the next 2 weeks about how to invest in your kids and then also how we can help disciple the next generation. Have an incredible day, church.